Basel II and Basel III, these are the banking acts or the banking accords that regulate the banking activities, the financial activities, and the health of the banks. In Basel II, which was introduced somewhere around 1980s, that regulated the riskiness of the uh, credit risk factor or the riskiness of the bank's lending activities, and it did it by requiring the banks to set aside a capital reserve of 2.5% on the of the risk weighted assets. Moving forward, in 2009 2008, Basel 3 was introduced, and in Basel 3 it required that the banks undergo a stress test, identify the risk weighted assets, and accordingly at a minimum have an 8% of capital reserve. So 2%, 2.5% as per the Basel II Accord, uh, based on the risk-weighted assets, and then on based on the Basel 3, the minimum of 8%. So totally 9.5% of capital reserves the banks are required to maintain. And in my previous videos uh, uh, you would have noticed that SBI maintained a 16% of capital reserve ratio, and HDFC maintained around 14% of capital reserve ratios. Now, coming to this factor of Basel Accord. Uh, Basically, the Basel 3 was introduced for the three pillars. Um, uh, which needs to be regulated. One is the market risk, then the operational risk, and the liquidity risk. In case of market risk, the market volatility, the macro factors which is not in control of the bank, which is outside of the outside of the controls of the banks, are mostly the macro factors, like how the exchange is reacts, and it's the bank's responsibility to monitor any market risks. Then there are operational risks, which is controllable risks, which the banks, like through the proper governance in place, ensures that they have operational excellence in place. Then is the liquidity risk. Liquidity risk is very close to the Basel II, and liquidity risk, it's basically it involves the credit risk assessment, and as well as the various other reserves measurement. Basically, in a liquidity risk, the defaults, not just based on credit, but but also with respect to uh, the the other exposures, is taken into account. Under Basel 3, first thing is, like said, 2.5% is to be maintained as a capital reserve ratio. Then then it is required that the 7.5 that is 8% approximately is tested. So most of the banks, for example, if it has lent it out, for example, uh, 200 million dollars of money, and it identified that the 50% of it is like is risk weighted, that is around 100 million. Then straight away 2.5 percent of that 100 million, that is 2.5 million, has to be set aside as a capital reserve per the this one per the Basel. And then a stress test has to be done on the on those 200 million assets, or rather the 100 million uh, uh, risk identified assets, risk weighted assets. So uh, during a stress test period, uh, that risk weighted 100 million, it's phased out into three proportions, and it has to act as the as any banking as any lending activity, that is in phases. The money has to be sent out of the bank, and see to it that amount is returned back within the 30 days, and identify the risk weight factor of such assets. So for example, of the risk weighted assets of 100 million, 100 million of 100 million, there were like SME and individual loan amount of say 25 million. So 25 million is sent out sent out to other bank, and checked that it's giving the returns. So this 25 million, which is the individual and this one individual and SMEs, this has to be left from the bank, and it has to be returned back with 100% return. And that will on that if it passes the stress test, then it will be it won't be considered as a risk weighted, or it won't be qualified for a higher this one a higher reserve percentage, or higher reserve slab. And with that, it is required that uh, the individual savings account deposits, which is given as lending, and SMEs, these are treated as the safest funds, and hence it automatically uh, reduces it automatically reduces as a risk it automatically reduces as a risk this risk uh, hmm, risk uh, weighted asset. It is considered as a less riskier asset, and here the 25 million, it will be just it will not be qualified for the 8% reserve. Then with the of the 75 million which is left, for example, the corporate loans were 50 million. Of this 50 million, there were 50 million. Of this 50 million, say the credit ratings were uh, double A. Double A, that would qualify for risk weighted as those would be treated as a simple risk, and it would be left out of the bank, and would be treated as the asset, would be treated for for its return. And if for double A, this one, uh, of this 50 million, 8% has to be set aside as a capital reserve. That is, of the 50 million, uh, 4 million would be set aside as the reserve. So 4 million and the 2.5 million, totally 6.5 million qualifies as the capital reserve. And then the remaining 25 million, for example, the analyst has to mostly deal with the other interbank bank deposits and market securities separately during the stress test, invest it in the market, send it out as a lending activity in the market, and have it returned back within the 3 days, and it will result into uh, it will result into 100% return or not. So based on that, if how much of the asset is deposited back, is returned back, would qualify as a risk weighted factor. uh, Suppose of that 25 million, um 10 million were not returned back within 30 days. That becomes a risk weighted asset, and of that 8%, that is around 800,000, becomes the risk weighted asset. So totally it would be 7.3 million, which would qualify as the risk weighted assets overall during the as a result of the stress test. So this is the stress test of the Basel III Accord. Then also, like, coming back to the liquidity risk factor, when a balance sheet is uh, is uh, componentialized, that is, it is broken into components, then is broken into components, then it has to be measured, like how much is the equity component and how much is the retained earning. Of the equity component and the retained earning, if the total amount, say in the balance sheet on the liability section, the equity component is around, for example, if we are going by the 200 million balance sheet size itself, if the equity component were somewhere around, say, very less, that is around 50 mm, We can go like $50,000. Let's go by that very nominal one. It's a private bank, and a retained earning is somewhere around 50 million. So it total capital equity tier 1 would be uh, common equity tier 1 would be 50 million 50,000 dollars. And the risk weighted assets, it was already identified that the risk weighted assets is 100 million, and hence the ratio would be 50 million uh, 50,000 divided by the 100 million, and that 100 million would be this one. So mostly on top of the regulation, if it is looked, the asset side the secured loan and the nature of assets give an insight whether it's a secured asset, or is it a non-secured asset, and it qualifies for the loan. So I mean, loan, and it qualifies for the return basically.